Welcome back to Realigned and Unfiltered. Today's episode is a gentle but powerful invitation into a part of healing that doesn't get talked about enough. Healing the parts of us that learned to hide in the shadows. This conversation is especially aligned with the season that we're in. Winter is nature's shadow time. Everything turns inward. Nothing is being forced to grow. And in that quiet, what's being buried begins to rise. So, if you've been feeling more sensitive, more reflective, more triggered, or more tired lately, you're not broken. You're listening. Something inside of you is ready to be seen. In this episode, Diana and I are going to explore what shadow work really is, why it shows up through our triggers and patterns, and how meeting these hidden parts of ourselves with compassion, not judgment, is what actually creates healing.
This is Realigned and Unfiltered.
Together, we're peeling back the layers, exploring consciousness, and transforming life's messiness into meaning. So, welcome back, everybody. Today's episode is one that we've been really intentional about bringing you at this moment because it's foundational. We're ready to talk about shadow work.
Oh, yes. And Carly, something that I just want to state right away is that, most people, when we hear the words shadow work, we think it's like this formal spiritual practice. But honestly, a lot of us are already doing or have already been doing shadow work before we even had language, before we even knew, the term shadow work.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, like for me, I didn't wake up one day and say, "Hey, I'm doing shadow work today," right? I was just trying to understand certain parts of myself that felt shattered or that I was getting very triggered about,
Yeah.
and noticing those patterns and starting to question my thoughts and my beliefs and my identity
Yeah.
without realizing that I was bringing all this unconscious shadow work into my awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think I just wanted to bring that up because if you're listening and thinking, I don't know if I've done shadow work before, let me just offer you this thought, right? You've done shadow work if you have ever asked yourself the question, why does this bother me so much?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or you're noticing yourself reacting very strongly to something, and later you've thought, huh, that reaction wasn't really about the moment. It was something deeper than that, right?
Yeah, really being kind of conscious about something that before we might have used a defense mechanism not to dig into.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to kind of note here that this is a very introductory, very simple opening to the idea of the shadow and shadow work. It is something that can go layers and layers and layers deep for sure. But it's a conversation that we want to start having and refer back to and deepen as time goes on. Right. So,
Yes.
creating compassion. Let's not forget compassion here. We hear
Uh-huh.
shadow and we think, should that make me be scared?
Yeah.
And I think that a defensive part of you may want to be scared by the concept of shadow work. And so let's remember always, especially here at Realigned and Unfiltered, creating compassion for the parts of you that were shaped by survival, by
Uh-huh.
conditioning, by systems,
Uh-huh.
saying this part of me isn't welcome.
Mm,
Okay. We want to create compassion for all parts. And we want to
right.
create a compassionate landing space as we're working on what we're going to call shadow work. So,
Mhm.
we are intentionally releasing this stuff in January because
Yeah.
culturally, we're told that this is the time to reinvent, to optimize, to push forward. If you listen to our last episode, we talked a lot about reclaiming some slowness here, reclaiming some
Mhm.
reflection here. We talked about how winter is about going inward, about going quiet, about being reflective. And so what you'll learn today is that shadow work is a winter practice. Shadow
Mhm.
work is done in that internal reflective space.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Carly. If you haven't listened to that last episode, I think it would provide some good background foundational work to what we're talking about here.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. I think it's good to kind of start with the question, what actually is shadow work?
Yep.
And there's two parts of this really. There's the unconscious part of shadow work, and I think it's key to kind of differentiate these two parts of it, the unconscious and the conscious part of it, because the unconscious shadow work is when life is forcing you to look at yourself, right? It's the process of where something in your life has triggered and is revealing these unconscious parts of yourself that our ego really is not identifying with. And those parts that are usually showing up when we're triggered by something. So we
Mhm.
could be feeling anxious or irritated or something and sad. And we all of a sudden often we overreact to something or we completely shut down.
Yeah, I'm sure that everybody can relate to that experience once or twice in their
Yeah,
life.
right, right. And those are the moments where our reactions, they feel bigger than what's actually happening in that moment itself, right? Again, it's those that emotional kind of spiral that we have, or the big breakdown, or where we just feel like our identity is completely collapsing. And so this
Mhm.
is the unconscious part of it, is just like when we're in something but we don't know we're in it yet, right? And then the conscious part of shadow work is this is what we're inviting you into here with this conversation, is when we stop running, we've noticed, like, okay, there's a pattern that I'm noticing with
Mhm.
myself here.
Mhm.
And we stop running from the pattern and start getting a little bit more curious about it. Like, all right, I observed that. I'm not
Mhm.
gonna react to it just yet. Right.
Mhm.
And we kind of slow down here. We start questioning more so than judging things
Mhm.
that we're observing. And to your point, to your beautiful point, is always bringing more of that compassion towards something instead
Mhm.
of trying to control it, which most of us, we want to hold on to something and control it, but we're learning to integrate instead of suppressing, and
Mhm.
keeping the things um, tucked in. So I think, that's just something really to point out, because we don't typically start shadow work because, oh, we're spiritual, and we're going to start this spiritual practice. Yeah, sometimes that some people enter in that method, but it's usually something that starts because something has really hurt us and something has really triggered us, and then we're in it, right? Um,
Yeah, we
so,
don't typically wanna jump into the shadow unless we're actually forced to by some
right.
discomfort or some sort of, big event that happens in our life, that's for sure. It's in the shadow for a reason. I mean, a lot of our
Right.
stuff exists in the unconscious because we want it there,
Hmm.
or we have needed it there for a
Yeah.
period of time in our lives. So,
Right.
it's interesting when you were going through your list there, observing instead of reacting,
Yeah.
questioning instead of judging, bringing compassion instead of control, and then learning how to integrate. That's very much aligned with those ingredients of mindful self compassion, which we're always talking
Yeah.
about here, right? Mindfulness, connecting, and then being compassionate. So, this very much is in alignment with what we talk about and what we do.
Uh-huh.
So it's very important, I think, to start really with a picture of what is the shadow, right? What is
Yeah.
the shadow? Ooh, it sounds kind of scary. And honestly, if you Google shadow work or if you YouTube shadow work, as I did when I was first starting in my journey, actually learning about Carl Jung, who we'll get into in
Yeah.
a bit. There was some really creepy stuff.
Yeah.
The shadow is portrayed as almost this um, gothic experience in a way. At least it was a few years ago when I was first
Mhm.
diving into it, and I was a little bit creeped out, to be honest with you. I was like, "I
Mhm.
don't know if I should be touching this."
Yeah.
Um, and so what I think is really important to do is to demystify the shadow and, um, bring the shadow into the light in terms of where it comes from and why we do this. So,
Mm.
the shadow effectively is the unconscious layer in you that you're not. So, I always do it like this, it's kind of like in the lower parts. It's in the lower parts or it's in the dungeon of your mind, right? So,
Yeah.
it's the parts of you that were repressed,
Mhm.
abandoned, hidden, often
Mm.
in your very early life. So,
Yeah.
when you think about your childhood, right? As we all for the most part can. Think about maybe you cried and you were told to stop. What did you
Mm.
learn about crying? What did you learn about being sad? You
Mhm.
laughed too loud and you were shamed by someone. What did you learn about your big laughter? And
Oh, yeah.
where did it go when you were shamed for that thing? You expressed anger and you were punished. So what did you learn about anger and what did you do with it? So when we're young, we learn quickly what's acceptable and what isn't based on our security, and it's our survival instincts that help us learn these things. These are all very unconscious processes that are happening.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I learned that being forthcoming with my desires or
Mhm.
having leadership qualities would get me called bossy. I learned
Mm.
that. That's a personal one that I learned. It would get me called bossy, it would get me ridiculed, and it would get me made fun of. So, being bossy or being, forthcoming with my desires, let's say,
Mhm. Mhm.
became a bit of a complicated thing for me, and so
Yeah.
partly, at least, got put into a shadow realm where I tried to tuck it away, right? "That
Yeah.
girl is annoying, so let's put her away."
Mhm.
That's what I learned, all unconsciously. Nobody said to me necessarily, "You're annoying," but they called me names. And
Yeah.
so that got put, somewhat into a box where I said, "You can't come out," very
Yeah.
often, and she
Yeah.
didn't like that. She didn't like that so much, but there
Mm.
she went.
Mm.
None of those parts disappear, right?
Mhm.
They go underground. They go
Mhm.
into the dungeon. They go into a place
Right.
that we lock them away.
Yeah. Yeah, and exactly. A little bit earlier when you said, when we think of shadow work, it kind of feels like this creepy sensation because
Mhm.
I did when I entered my shadow work, I did it not even knowing the term shadow work. It was something that after I had done all this work, I learned about, this term. I saw this term shadow work. I'm like, what is this? And I looked and I was like, oh, I'm glad I did that without kind of looking into it because because I did it more organically in that aspect. But when we think of the term shadow, you may feel that it feels not that good, but
Mhm.
really in reality, the shadow isn't something that's evil, right?
Mhm.
It's something that it's an unmet emotion. To your point, it's something that we've tucked away in the dungeon and
Mhm.
have suppressed. So these are emotions that were never processed and they left us with these unintegrated experiences.
Right.
So, and these are parts of us that we could adapt and learn to bring along with us, but we
Mhm.
haven't. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah.
And some people will say it's just trapped emotions. And,
Mm.
it's true that it is trapped emotions, it's unprocessed emotions, but it's also parts of the personality. So, like
Mm,
I said, being,
yeah.
for lack of a better word, being bossy or being outgoing or being stubborn or being in
Mhm,
charge. What did you learn wasn't okay because, let's say, your parents didn't like it, your teacher didn't like it, your church
mhm.
didn't like it, your government didn't like it, right? What about
Right.
you were you told that's not going to fly in this microculture that you live? So
Mm,
huck it down,
yeah.
right? Where did you learn that it wasn't okay to be the way that you are? And then where did that part go?
Mhm,
It
mhm,
went into the shadow. And so maybe you don't know that you did that, but do you see yourself annoyed? This is a
mm,
great one. Do you see
yeah.
yourself annoyed constantly by a person who lives a certain way or expresses a certain type of behavior or expresses a certain type of emotion, right? Do
Mhm,
you find yourself annoyed or triggered by that person because they get to do it and
mhm,
you don't, right?
mhm.
It's that part of you living in the shadow or living in the dungeon, let's say, looking out the window going, how come they get to and I don't?
Yeah.
And every once in a while, do you almost feel like you get this like let's say, rage demon just kind of like comes out and like takes over your life for a minute and like does all this
Mhm.
stuff. And you're like, I don't even know why I did that.
Yeah.
Sometimes that shadowed part gets really strong and it breaks free from the door and it does a bunch of stuff that we would never normally allow ourselves to do. But
Yeah.
it got free for a minute before we tuck it back down,
Yeah.
right? And
Oh,
so
yeah.
instead of allowing the rage monster to come through or the bossy monster to come through or whatever, what we really want to do is we want to make contact and we want to
Yeah.
figure out how to integrate now when you're in charge of your safety, your security, and your sense of being, not the systems who brought you up and told you who you
Yeah.
are, right?
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, this is triggered. You just saying that just triggered the rage monster that came out of me in high school. Like, as I reflected on how much things that I was actually suppressing just from my childhood,
Mm,
growing up within a single mother household, not having my father, things that were just, I didn't know that I had suppressed as a child that really came out in high school.
interesting.
And those times where I just, I say it's the Leo in me, but the lion, like the rage came out on levels where I was like, oh, now, reflecting back, I see all the work and how when I became conscious of it and started, kind of working on it. But you're right. It
Mm.
feels like that. It feels like this big personality is coming out that I just suppressed for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. Because whatever you learned about being angry or having rage, like maybe you were angry that things were going a certain way in your life, but you
Hmm.
knew that that anger wouldn't get you anywhere. So you buried it.
Yeah.
You buried it. You
Hmm.
buried it. And eventually it just came up and out. I know that I was raised in a certain type of culture that didn't allow certain types of behaviors or even thoughts of certain type
Hmm.
of behaviors. And I remember there was a certain point in my life where that shadowed aspect of myself just came up and wreaked havoc in my life and overdid it to a
Yeah.
huge degree because it just wanted to be realized and recognized and it wasn't
Hmm.
allowed and it had been suppressed for so long that it just came up and kind of destroyed my life for a little bit
Yeah.
until I got a handle on it and
Right.
figured out that I needed to integrate that instead of not allowing something that I was told I couldn't allow. I needed to figure out
Hmm.
how I wanted it to be a part of my life in my own way. And until I
Right.
did that, it would rage and then I would put it away and then it would rage and I would put it away. It was very frustrating. Very
Hmm.
frustrating. So, this is
Yeah.
a great moment for us to talk about Carl Jung. I can't believe we haven't
Yes.
actually said his name yet.
I know.
So, the one who really articulated the concept of the shadow, this archetype of the shadow is Carl Jung, my very, very favorite psychologist.
Yes.
And Jung believed that the psyche was made up of multiple layers, right? So we have the
Mhm.
conscious mind, then the unconscious, then the
Mhm.
personal unconscious, and then the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious, you'll often hear me talk about when I'm talking about common humanity and connecting
Right.
to the group as a whole, right? So
Mhm.
within that system, the shadow, the archetype of the shadow, holds everything that we don't want to know about ourselves. Of course, there's
Ugh.
also a collective shadow, which we
Mhm.
are slowly but surely exposing, I do believe, in this present moment in time. And we'll jump into more conversations about that later. But today, the personal shadow. So,
Yeah.
the parts of us that we don't feel safe knowing. Now, Carl Jung said individuation, so the process of becoming your authentic self, requires shadow integration. So, if you are at a stage in your life where you really believe you're going through this awakening, you're going through this process of becoming your true self, your true
Yeah.
individuated, authentic self, guess what? Shadow work is your next job.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we don't bypass this whole high vibes only
Yeah.
community that's out there. Light and love only, high vibes only.
No.
No,
No.
I'm sorry, you don't get to pretend that you are healed. When you pretend that you are healed, you just shadow all of the stuff that has not yet received healing and integrating. And the shadow influences our behavior, whether we acknowledge it or not. So
Oh,
we are
yes.
going to introduce you to and welcome you into acknowledging it.
Yeah. that's the key, Carly.
Mhm.
Ignored shadow, it doesn't disappear. That shadow is
Right.
going to get bigger, right?
Mhm.
And it's going to leak into so many things. It leaks into our relationships.
Yep.
We sabotage ourselves.
Mhm.
We start building a lot of resentment, and then started being more anxious and having this anxiety, and then just projecting onto other people.
Mhm.
And this reminds me so much of our discussion on the book The Four Agreements.
I was gonna say the same thing, just like what we talked about with the 4 agreements.
Yeah, yeah, it does. It reminds me of the conversation about everyone kind of being your mirror, right? Because it
Mhm.
supports the thoughts that our relationships are our mirrors, and the triggers are our teachers. So, yeah, there's a whole playlist on the Four Agreements and the breakdown we did on that. So, I will also invite you to, I'll link it below to this description as well, because it goes so in hand with this, I feel like.
It does. Actually, when we were reading the 4 agreements, all I could think about was Carl Jung. I could think about the
Hmm.
shadow work. I could see the projection, this when we project something onto somebody, is it actually a reflection of ourself? And it often is, and we don't know that. We don't understand that because it's a shadowed part of
Yeah,
self. So we
right.
need to go deep diving into our shadow so that we can realize what is triggering me so much, right?
Yeah,
Like, this is why it matters. It matters because what triggers us is data.
yeah,
It's data. And
exactly.
so that points to what you deeply care about, what still hurts. Shadow work
Hmm.
helps identify those toxic patterns, not
Hmm.
so that you can judge yourself, because this is a compassion land, right?
Yeah,
So that you
yeah.
can change them consciously with compassion and curiosity.
Right. And that in turn then builds more trust within ourselves,
Hmm.
right? More self trust. It builds more courage and more of the resilience with our emotions, right? Our more
Right.
emotional resilience. It allows us to embody more of our whole self, instead of just, oh, this is the best part of the polished, most best part of myself that I'm going to keep highlighting. No, we're integrating, we're embodying our authentic, true selves,
That's right.
right?
That's right. And so
Yeah.
Carl Jung also talks a lot about the personas. So we put on these
Mm,
personas, we put on these masks. So this is my mother persona. This is my
mhm,
outgoing woman in the community persona. This is my psychotherapist persona. Okay. Yeah. When I show up into a space, I like to show up in a certain way. So I put that face on, I put that mask on, and I show up that way. But when I come home, am I that person?
mm,
Or, am I more than that? And what would it be like if I showed up as my whole self
mm.
everywhere I went? So that's another kind of concept of the Carl Jung world, is the personas, and what parts of us get shadowed even temporarily when we show up in persona land. And sometimes do we over identify with our persona so much we lose our true self?
Oh,
What we
yeah.
want to constantly be asking people to come back to is true self.
Mm.
We want to ask people to learn how to identify with true self and then stay true to that self in every struggle, in every environment, in every, what if you could just be your true self? What would it be like to walk through this world?
Oh, right. I mean, just even the thought of that feels liberating, alleviating. Alleviating comes before liberating to me.
I like
Alleviating,
that.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
alleviating, like it's
Yeah.
alleviating this pressure
Yeah.
to then become liberated, to then become like, "This
Right.
is me, this is it, this is I actually am somebody who likes things to be done, in the way that I like them to be done, and I don't actually have to apologize for that in a
Right.
place and in a moment where I'm in charge." Like, what what if it's okay if I run my business the way that I feel is best to run my business, and I don't have to apologize for being bossy?
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
My
love
parents are
that.
probably watching this laughing right now.
Oh, right, and that's all the qualities, right, to your point earlier, but it's just like, what make you just such an amazing leader, right?
Mm, yeah.
Right? So if you chose to keep seeing it all like, "Oh, I'm just too bossy," and never, um, took the opportunity to use that as a strength, you would be suppressing yourself. You're never living your authentic self. Yeah.
Right. And so on in some people's cases, they may say like, I will never show up as a leader. I will never
Yeah.
show up as bossy. I'm going to fully bury that. In my case, I did like a half bury.
Yeah.
I did this thing where like I couldn't fully not be that way because that's just, that's just me. Um
Yeah.
And yet I would find myself being embarrassed or apologizing or feeling like, oh, should I have said that? Should I not have said that? And it caused a lot of discomfort for me because I wasn't living with a fully realized version of myself that
Yeah.
this woman just actually knows how to get stuff done and wants to, right? It's
Mhm.
kind of this
Mhm.
half and half. And so
Yeah.
doing some liberating of that part of me, which did really look like doing inner child reclaiming and loving and healing and integrating really helped me to be able to move forward into my true
Yeah.
path. I mean, we're
Right.
given personality distinctions for these lifetimes that we live on purpose.
Mhm.
We're not all given the same ones. We're not all given the same things. We're all given exactly what we need for this life that we came here to live. And then they get kind of stamped out of us sometimes, and we have to reclaim them to get on our highest timeline, to get on our
Yeah.
path that we came here for. And this is why shadow work is so awesome. It's highest
Yes.
timeline work, right? This
Yeah.
is to project you forward into the future that you came here for. It gets me
Right.
really excited.
It's exciting. It is exciting.
It
And
is
I think it
exciting.
just yeah, it is. It's not it's part of this deeply human experience, right? And that we're learning more and more about as
Mhm.
we start using these types of processes and start questioning things and not allowing us to just ignore that, but actually doing the work that comes associated with the thoughts that get triggered. Like, okay, why am I having this thought? Or why am I feeling this way? Or why should I be suppressing? It's doing the work that comes along with those questions and those
Yeah.
feelings.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm actually glad that you said that because that brings me back to, this concept of compassion, which is also very important because we can get quite like, well, why am I so triggered by that? Or why, get a little annoyed with ourselves or defensive about things. And this is where compassion comes in
Mhm.
again, right? We're working on
Always.
timeline self. And instead of going like, oh, why am I denying this part of me? Or what we can just be compassionate in the experience of discovery and be compassionate in the experience of realizing like that part of me got shadowed for a reason. And I can have a lot of love and compassion and understanding for myself instead of judgment, right?
Yeah.
Or just do away with the judgment already, you know?
Mhm.
So, shadow work, when done correctly, increases empathy for yourself and for others. This is the
Yeah.
most of the time when something gets shadowed, essentially, it's because somebody made us feel like we needed to shadow those things. And
Mhm.
so we can feel a lot of frustration or anger or blame towards others, right? For why things got shadowed for us. And do you know what? We don't need to do that. We really
Yeah.
don't need to do that. It is the journey of this human life to rediscover our source code, like we've talked
Yeah.
about before, right? And
I
so
love that.
in a sense, we can almost say, okay, thank you, system or parent or brother or whatever that shadowed that for me because you gave me work to do, which is
You're
going
right.
to grow my resilience, which that's such a powerful word you talked about. So
Yeah.
important to do the shadow work also because Jung warns that an unexamined shadow can scale outward in a pretty nasty way. I mean, we talked about the
Oh,
rage monster, but
yeah.
extreme cases of shadow can often look like prejudice, major conflict, collective
Mhm.
harm. And
Mhm.
so that's why this work isn't just personal, it's deeply human and it is for the greater collective. Because if I'm working on the shadowed part of me that may come up as prejudice, you know,
Mhm.
then I'm doing work in the collective because we need to collectively heal prejudice, my friends.
Yes, yes. I think that's a good segue, Carly, to talk about how to do shadow work
Mhm.
because that's important. And I think shadow work is something that, as we approach it, is not trying to force yourself into feeling emotionally overwhelmed, because it could feel like that. But it's about more so providing a safe space for you to explore.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, some common things that people do when entering the shadow work is through journaling, through meditation, through therapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Working with a guide through structured processes, right? Carly offers her therapy sessions. I offer NLP sessions,
Mm-hmm.
and but I do want to emphasize here that um, grief based shadow work is very different because, after we lose somebody or something, it's not about fixing the reactions we're having or finding meaning right away. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's really literally about creating a safe space for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, after loss, our shadow isn't a repressed personality trait that we've been, hiding in the background. It's more so our nervous system that is in survival mode, and we have to be able to not work to forcing forgiveness or reframing our trauma right away.
Mm-hmm.
It's more so about making ourselves feel better and not bypassing the anger and the feelings that we're having, right? So
Yeah.
so I would say that shadow work is um right there the entry points of, like, okay, there's parts of me that I want to work on myself. Let me do some journaling, let me work with somebody to guide me through this, let me do some meditations. But also, if you're going through grief that has kind of triggered you into this work, it's not about, oh, let me just go and meditate and journal now. It's about, hey, feeling human, allowing your humanness to come through. And hey, I just need to be real with what I'm feeling. And that's enough to make me feel alive right now. Right. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
catching
You're
ourselves in that.
right. Right. You're so good to always bring it back to people who may be going through acute and present moment grief, right? So when we're talking about shadow work, a lot of the time grief does kind of shake us upside down, and it forces us to start suddenly see our shadow and need to start working through our shadow. And you're right, grief based shadow work is slightly different. Now
Yeah.
I'm going to clarify here. When we do shadow work, there will be grief. I
Oh, yeah.
promise there will be
Oh,
grief.
yeah.
When we do shadow work, there will be grief. Oh my gosh, this young part of me was locked up there in the shadow all this time because this and this happened to them. That is so hard. And there will be grief and there will be mourning. That is different than I'm
Yeah.
going through an acute grief right now because of a loss that
Yeah.
is now forcing me upside down, and
Mhm.
my shadow is all shaking out. So we're talking about two separate versions of grief and shadow work here.
Yeah.
For those of you in acute grief, especially those people who understand Diana's work with stillbirth and lost moms, be very, very gentle. This is
Yeah.
an invitation to, yeah, create safety in the nervous system, create safety in the shadows, and allow the hard to feel hard. And you don't
Mm,
have to solve it right away, right? So
right.
sometimes shadow work, you're right, to point that out. Sometimes shadow work gets like overlapped. People say shadow work and they say grief and shadow and blah, 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 blah. It's important
Hmm.
to pull those two apart.
Yeah.
And there's grief pulls you into the shadows,
Hmm.
and there's shadow work will stimulate some grief.
Right. Right, and it works both ways because grief that pulls us into the shadow because of a, a trauma that has inserted, you'll start entering, shadow work that unlocks layers more of suppressed emotions and suppressed feelings and things that now it's like I have triple the work in front of me to kind of face, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so let's walk it back a little bit and let's break it
Yes.
down. What is an entry point? What is an entry question to
Yeah.
ask,
Right.
to start becoming conscious of what has been unconscious? Essentially, that's the definition here for the shadow work we're
Yeah.
talking about, becoming conscious of what has been unconscious.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so what's a good opening question?
Well, I would say when we notice a irritation or
Mhm.
anger or sadness that gets brought into our awareness, that's when we stop and we ask, where is this coming from?
Great.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So when you do the where is this coming from practice, I will offer this right now to each and every one of you. Be
Okay.
very, very aware that the common egoic reaction is self-protection. So,
Mm,
so our ego is built
mm,
in there to protect us, right? And protect our sense of identity. And our sense of identity does not include those shadowed parts. So when we
right.
truly and honestly ask the question, where is this coming from? You're going to need to go through some layers. The
Mm,
most obvious layer is often pointing. Well, that person's reaction made me. That person's
mhm,
behavior made me whatever, irritated, angry,
mhm,
annoyed, whatever it is that we're asking, where did that come from? First thing
mhm,
we're going to do is we're going to point out
mhm.
that person made me, that person's behavior, that system made me. We're going to always point out. We may also jump to excuses or we might shut down. So, well, if only such and such didn't happen, then I'd be okay. If only such and such
Yeah.
didn't, then it would be okay. Sure. Notice the layer. No judgment here. Just notice the layer. You're going to have to
Yeah.
go through the layers of the crusts of the earth before you get to that shadow region, right?
Mhm,
Or we may just shut down,
mhm.
right? This is always what happens. I have no control. I have no power. Why does this keep happening? Why can't I figure this out? I'm just going to stop trying to fix it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put on my Netflix and drink my wine and not because it's too hard.
Mhm,
It's too hard.
mhm.
All of those reactions are normal. They're part of the human condition. You are not broken. Go through the layers. Attempt not to judge yourself. Use a lot of compassion. Your mind is using its natural built-in safety features.
Yeah.
Okay? You don't want to be the reason why anything is wrong, right?
Right.
We don't want that. Those features are trying to protect you. They are often known as protectors,
Yeah.
right? So instead of looking at the deeper, truer reason in the shadow for these, reactions, behaviors, whatever, the protectors will try their hardest to get you to look somewhere else, anywhere.
Right.
So if it's someone
Right.
else's fault, then you don't have to go through the pain of dealing with it, right?
Yeah.
Or if your nervous system believes that you shunned that part to the shadows for a reason, it needs it to stay there by all means necessary. So it may start some sort of anxiety. It may start some sort of shutdown, some sort of depression, right?
Right.
This is where compassion and curiosity need to be the main ingredients in this type of self exploration. Okay.
Yeah.
Shadow work is self exploration in the layers that your self protective mode want nothing to do with. And
Right.
so bring your compassion, bring your curiosity, and use nervous system regulation. We've taught you guys that basic reset, right?
Mhm.
And then simple things like drinking water, having a shower, breathing,
Ugh.
moving your body, even shaking it out a little bit. Eat something that's grounding. Get outside on the earth. Listen to some music. Have a little dance party. My favorite old show, Grey's Anatomy, they used to dance it out when they just put on music and just dance it out. It's a great
Yeah.
grounding technique. It's a great way to move stress through your body and reset your nervous system because
Yeah.
dysregulation blocks insight.
Right.
And we need space. We need regulation to find those insights. And the best thing that we can do is offer ourselves self compassion for whatever we find. And
Right.
then we might have a hope of being able to do the integration work.
Right. And it's worth saying, Carly, I know that I said this a little bit earlier, but if you have, recognize that you are facing parts of your shadow and you don't even know how to do it. First, I
Mhm.
would offer listen to our podcast, but also seek professional licensed professionals that help people through these areas in their life,
Sure.
because that's not a weakness. It's
Mhm.
the fact that you are aware enough, like, I need help, that is, it's wisdom. That's a strength, right? I'm able to recognize something. I need some help through this. So
Mhm.
again, I would point to Carly as amazing source. It's helping us through the process of walking hand by hand through what you're experiencing. So I just wanted to offer that in here too, because some people may feel like, yeah, okay, this is all great. I still need someone to handhold me through this, or some guided practices that I talking to someone external to yourself is very helpful, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah,
And, so getting professional help is a great thing to do. Doing shadow work, going into the deep parts of your psyche with support is a great
yeah,
thing to do. Sometimes support feels a little bit outside of someone's ability to reach for in a moment. Maybe
yeah,
it's a financial thing, maybe it's a time
right,
thing. There's lots of
yeah,
reasons why it can be difficult to reach out to somebody else for help, and I don't want you to feel like there's despair in that, because there
yeah.
are practices, and we're going to go through a couple and actually
Mm,
offer one, because you can start with that simple question like we said
yeah,
of what is causing this? Why am I behaving this way? Just simple questions to start bringing the unconscious conscious. And then you can start doing reflecting. And
mhm,
so this goes so well following our last episode about January, honoring the
mhm,
god Janus, the one who looks back and looks forward, right?
yeah,
It's a reflection time. It's a reflection month. Winter is about reflecting. Nature is quiet. Energy is inward. Rest is required. Doesn't matter if society is telling you to hustle and bustle. We're just going to go
right,
ahead and forget about that right now. This is
hmm,
a time for reflection. And
yeah,
shadow work is all about that. Being on the deep inside, reflecting, considering. Don't go in there trying to solve it quite yet,
right,
right? Take it one step at a time. The first thing is noticing.
yeah, yeah,
Noticing and naming. If you can do those two things, you're already so far ahead. Use your reflection practice to notice and name. And name whatever comes up. I'm noticing that I really want to blame someone. I'm
hmm,
noticing that I really want to shut down and not deal with this. I'm noticing that I feel really heartbroken about this. I'm noticing grief
yeah,
coming up. Write those things down. Take note of them.
right,
You don't have to solve it. Not yet.
right,
Take your time.
yeah. I love that you brought up, like, that this goes right along with January, because it does. And
Mhm.
this is an intentional session, I mean, episode during this time, because when you do this shadow work and you notice, the time that we're in right now, and you're feeling it even deeper at this moment in time, you're able to reframe what you're feeling and say, "Hey, wait, what if nothing is wrong with me?
Mhm.
What if this is the season that I should be listening and not trying to just start new or reinventing something," right?
Mhm.
Winter is the unconscious season, right? Where seeds are still underground and transformation is happening,
Uh-huh.
but invisibly,
Yeah.
right? And we're able to honor the rhythm that
Mhm.
we're naturally feeling.
Mhm.
And that way, when we do integrate change and start something new, it's built on a sustainable foundation, right? And it's not something that's going to be forced. It's building the groundwork for the new to come in a really solid way.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, shadow work is not about darkness.
Yeah.
I think this is really, really important. Shadow work is about wholeness.
Hmm.
It's about unconditional love
Yeah.
for your whole self, for the parts of you that kept you safe by protecting or hiding the parts of you that weren't allowed.
Hmm.
It's about unconditional love and understanding and acceptance of that whole system that's been alive inside of you all this time, even if it's time for some to move out, even if it's
Yeah.
time for some to leave our system. It's not with anger, it's not with disgust, it's not with
Hmm.
despair, it's with compassion and love.
Yeah.
Love for all the parts of us that came before, right? Love for all the versions of us who came before. I've seen some beautiful art showing, this woman in the present day looking back at the other versions of herself who she was
Hmm.
before, thanking those versions of herself. And
Hmm.
often what we need to do is we need to eulogize them,
Yeah.
speak kindly about them, speak honoringly about them because they were who we needed to be when we needed to be it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
It again reminds me how liberating this work is. When I going back to what I mentioned earlier very quickly, like when I worked through my shadow, I did a lot of inner child healing, right? I talked to the version of the little girl of me where my heart just crumbled for her. I felt like the pain that she felt, and it really, after I worked through that and gave her so much love that she felt she was missing,
Mhm.
it was liberating to this moment in time, right now, my present moment.
Yeah.
So much. I was shocked, that it felt so liberating and so expansive. And that's why we're inviting you, right, in this episode to reflect on, like, okay, if something is not triggering you, and we don't want that. You don't want something traumatic. I mean, that's part of life in this human experience. And yeah, at some point in time, something will trigger you to be more reflective with yourself. But if you're listening to this and you haven't had something like that trigger you, you have the opportunity to consciously go into this work in a way where, like, okay, yeah, I notice some patterns within myself. I know I get triggered here. Let me look into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I love that you brought up the inner child work. I mean, I think we've kind of alluded to it, but you're right. A lot of what
Mhm.
happens when we work with our shadow parts is we end up finding younger versions of ourselves,
Yeah.
and they are looking for a completion of what
Yeah.
wasn't completed then. So, like you said,
Mm.
you gave so much love to her that she was craving, and it actually does rewire your system
Cool.
in the present moment.
Yeah.
A
Mhm.
good portion of the work that I do with people is connecting with the inner child that got stuck at this point or stuck at that point or learned that they were this and learned that they were that. And we're doing a lot of reorienting. And
Mhm.
it is expansive, it is beautiful, and it is ongoing. You said when I
Oh,
do
yeah.
my shadow work, but I'm sure that
Oh, yeah.
you mean is there is still plenty of shadow work to do because we are
Yep.
layers and layers and layers of self. Yeah, and it's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing to do. When you can come to a place of loving and accepting and choosing shadow work as a regular part of your life, it really does demystify the whole thing and allows it to just be part of your practice.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, okay, intro to shadow work. I think that's probably a lot for today.
I
And
think so, yeah.
we always want to offer people something supportive and something grounding. And so we decided to include a shadow work journaling practice for this episode, for listeners of this episode. So we are going to link in the description, and you'll be able to click that and receive our guided shadow work journaling prompt, something that you can feel expansive with, not
Mhm.
overwhelmed, aligning with the material that we've shared here, aligning with the Jungian shadow principles, nervous system awareness, and really focused on that January inward reflective season that we're so trying to help people align with here. So we will link that in the description. Please do help yourself to that. Share it with others. Share this episode with others. It's a great starting point for shadow work and when you feel ready to go deeper. we'll probably have an episode that goes deeper, or you're
Yes.
welcome to reach out to either of us for individual work as well. Thank you for spending this time with us today. If this conversation resonated with you, helped you feel seen, or expanded something in you, we would love for you to stay connected. Make sure to follow the podcast so you never miss an episode, and share this with someone who's also awakening on their journey. And if you feel called, please leave us a comment. It helps this message reach more people who are realigning with their truth, and it helps us feel connected to you. You can always reach out to us or join the conversation at realignedpod@gmail.com. We are building a community of humans waking up inside the dream, and we're so grateful you're part of it. Until next time, stay curious, stay awake, and stay realigned.